Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by regulatorwatch.com. Dragon slaying. That's what public health officials do. Over the past 150 years, great battles were fought and won against infectious disease, deplorable living conditions, and hazards on the road. Major progress was made in reducing mortality and raising life expectancy, all thanks to the public health movement. But there are still dragons to be slayed, and the fiercest and most formidable is smoking. At the turn of the 20th century, smoking-related diseases were rare, but as cigarette smoking became increasingly popular, lung cancer and heart disease became epidemic. Cigarette smoking invaded every aspect of modern life, from the battlefield to the home front, and permeated magazines, movies, and TV.
In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment? See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good tasting a cigarette can be.
Considering that even doctors in the 1940s and 50s promoted cigarettes, it's not hard to understand how smoking became so prevalent. But as more and more people began to get sick and die, public health officials unleashed a crusade to stamp out smoking. Canada played a leading role in the fight by passing new legislation that set worldwide standards for tobacco control. Laws enacted in the late 1980s and implemented in the 90s banned cigarette advertising, sports and entertainment sponsorships, and smoking in public spaces and in the workplace. The new laws also restricted in-store display, significantly increased taxes, and put health warnings and graphic images on the pack. A key player in developing Canada's tobacco control initiatives is David Sweanor, Ontario lawyer and adjunct professor of law at the University of Ottawa. He's a renowned expert on matters of public health dealing with tobacco and has spent the last 30 years on the front lines in the battle against smoking. He thinks e-cigarettes could be one of the biggest breakthroughs ever in public health. So RegulatorWatch.com reached out to ask why so many of his anti-smoking colleagues seem to disagree. David, thanks for joining us. First off, please tell our viewers a bit about your role in the battle against smoking.
Was admitted to the bar in Ontario in 1983. I went straight into working on public health, dealing with tobacco. I played a key role in a whole range of world precedent-setting measures in Canada, whether it be the tax increases, the advertising bans, the health warnings, the smoke-free spaces, getting smoking out of airplanes, all of that stuff. Having done it in Canada, I was replicating it, doing the same sort of stuff with the World Bank, the World Health Organization, other groups globally. And I'm now an adjunct professor of law at the University of Ottawa. I'm a member of the Center for Health Law Policy and Ethics at the University of Ottawa, and I've got a position at the University of Nottingham in the UK.
Well, there you have it. You're obviously the right guy to talk to. David, when we evaluate the regulatory environment around vaping, it appears public health officials are taking a zero-tolerance attitude.
Well, there's certainly a very strong abstinence-only part of what's going on in the anti-smoking movement. I think it's one of the most counterproductive things that we've ever seen. That we've known for decades, people smoke for the nicotine, they die from the tar, they die from the smoke. That the nicotine itself, at the dosage level somebody's looking for, is not particularly hazardous. So it can be usefully compared to caffeine. That many of us consume caffeine, some of us consume quite a lot of it, but we get caffeine in a way that causes us very little harm. If we got our caffeine by smoking tea leaves rather than brewing tea, that too would be killing us, not because of the caffeine, but because we'd be sucking smoke into our lungs.
So with vaping, nicotine is delivered through the vapor, not smoke, so does that mean less risk?
Well, in vaping, I mean, there's no doubt that once you get rid of the smoke, you get rid of the vast, vast majority of the problems associated with cigarettes. In this case, anybody who's, open-minded and actually understands the science and is willing to look at it is saying there is no question that it's way less hazardous, and massively less hazardous.
But David, a lot of your colleagues in the public health arena are saying the exact opposite. They're behind the push to demonize nicotine and ban vaping. Why is that?
I spent a lot of time trying to figure this out. Why you have people who will they support legalizing marijuana. They support giving teenagers information about how to prevent pregnancy. They support needle exchange programs. They support safe injection sites. But when you get to nicotine, they're abstinence only. And I think some of it is that we had people who got involved in this issue because they saw a black and white. They saw something where they could fight evil. And evil was the cigarette companies. And they play a really good role as evil, because these are people who were misleading the public for a very long time about a huge cause of death. They were denying that advertising affected consumption. They denied that they had any interest in people taking up smoking. They denied that it ever caused any illness. And I think people went after them the way that a dragon attracts dragon slayers. It's an evil entity and you're going to go out and destroy it. And I think some just lost sight of the public health component of this. And, they're still dragon slayers. They're saying, we got to kill this industry. We can't allow it to get into anything else. And we're going to define dragon very broadly. So, Brent, if you start an e-cigarette company or open a vape shop, suddenly they see you as part of the tobacco industry. Obviously you're not, but for them, they see the world in terms of dragons. And you've just become a dragon.
But dragon slaying sounds also very noble, but in the case of vaping, isn't it just doing more harm than good?
With nicotine, we've done this amazing thing that we've essentially given the cigarette companies a monopoly on long-term nicotine use. So if you need or want nicotine on an ongoing basis, you've got virtually no option other than to get it from smoking cigarettes, which then has a huge probability of killing you. And every time we come up with something, or entrepreneurs come up with an idea of a different way to do this, we could give them the nicotine without the smoke, it gets attacked. Not the cigarettes getting attacked, the alternative gets attacked. And that's part of that whole abstinence only thing, that it's really treating smoking, nicotine, tobacco like it's sin rather than it's a public health issue.
David, you're an anti-smoking crusader and were directly involved in developing the regulations which impose strict limitations on tobacco. Now vaping is being jammed into the same legislation. What's the impact of that?
What we're now saying to smokers is that your smoking is no more hazardous than vaping, because we're going to treat them the same. Vaping's the big problem, and you will probably see this as I do in talking to smokers who believe now, not only is vaping not way less hazardous, it's not even less hazardous. They think it's probably more hazardous, so they're not going to do it. And that's because the environment, the government is really clamping down on vaping, but you can still buy cigarettes in all these places. They're going to try to close the vape shops, but every corner store is selling you cigarettes. Well, what's that tell you? Cigarettes must be safer. And if they start talking about all these terrible things they found in e-cigarettes without putting it in context of saying, well, yeah, somebody found something that could be a problem, except that it's there at 1/1000th of the level you find in a cigarette. They just say it's there. It's scaring people. And if you have reputable institutions coming out with research that is saying how bad these things are, again, it's telling smokers, keep smoking.
Finally, David, is the regulatory push against vaping misplaced? And are public health officials taking their eye off the big issue, which is still cigarette smoking?
There's no question, but that's the big issue. That's the one we can deal with. We need to deal with the product. We need to deal with the delivery system. And we're being stymied. We're being prevented from doing that from people who think that by attacking any alternative to the cigarette, they're somehow getting somewhere. Well, all they're really doing is protecting the cigarette business and killing more Canadians.
Well, that's it for this edition of RegWatch. Before you head off, please like us on Facebook and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. For RegulatorWatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.